Hi, this is Corral again, and this is the second part of our video on pronombres in Espanol and or pronouns in English. And let's just do a little repaso, a little bit of review, so we can all be on the same page, ¿no? En el mismo lugar, ¿no? So, oh, by the way, Corral Fickler McLean, istudyguides.com. Okay, so remember, we're talking about pronouns, and pronouns, remember you have pro and the nouns, and the prefix pro has a lot of different meanings, but one meaning that it has is in substitute of. So a pronoun, pronombre, is substituting the noun. Okay, so there's a lot of different pronouns. You have subject pronouns, you have object pronouns, you have reflexive pronouns. In Spanish, they're called pronomiales. Pronomiales. I really don't know how you pronounce it in English. Pronomials. I think they're pronomials. We really don't have that in English. The closest thing we have in English would be like the reflexive, like me baño, I bathe myself. But in English, you don't say that. You don't say I bathe myself. Unless that's something extraordinary, because that's considered something that you normally do. But we'll talk about that later in another video. So today we're going to be continuing our conversation on personal pronouns, subject personal pronouns. Remember, in, like I said in the other tape, you have yo, which means I, tú, which means you. Don't forget the accent over the U. Él, don't forget the accent over the E. Ella, usted, nosotros, ellos, ellas, y ustedes. And remember, the big difference is tú, usted, y ustedes. Those three forms really don't exist in English. Then you have vos y vosotros, which I don't use at all. Okay, but in certain parts of Latin America, that form is used. Then you have él y ella exist in English, he and she. But the difference is ellos y ellas, that doesn't exist, because in English, when you're doing he and she plural, it's they, which is neuter. You don't know if the they is a male or, it's a group of males, a group of females, or a group of male and females. Also remember, when you have ellos y ellas, ellas is only for when there are women, and only women there. The minute that one male, no matter how young, no matter how small, no matter what, even though it's just one male and there's a billion women, it goes from ellas to ellos. Now, this is the part that I wanted to talk to in a little bit more detail. In English, when you're teaching English, if you've ever taught ESL, or if you've ever studied ESL, okay, you know that when you are speaking English, just like in French, you must put the subject pronoun in the sentence. There are few exceptions. One big exception, for example, when you're giving the command, sit, stand, walk, talk, eat. Okay, shut up, which is horrible, right? Shut up, right? Okay, now, but the you is understood there. And that's one of the exceptions. But generally speaking, if you are giving just a regular sentence, even a question, exclamatory sentence, whatever, you normally always have to have the subject pronoun. So it's either I talk, or you talk, or we talk, or they talk, or he or she or it talks, or they talk, whatever. That is not true with Spanish. In a normal sentence, when you are just making a statement, you do not include the subject pronoun. I'll say that again. In a normal sentence, where you are just making a statement or asking a question or whatever, you do not normally include the subject pronoun. In English, it makes sense that you must include the subject pronoun. In Spanish, it makes sense that it's not necessary to include the subject pronoun. And let me show you why. I hope you can see this board. In Spanish, you have the word hablo, right? Now, because of the ending of the word, you already have a lot of information. The word hablo, remember I'm not saying hablo, I'm saying hablo, no accent. What do I know? The first thing I know is I'm talking about I. I. How do I know it's I? Because it ends in the O. Right? It ends in the O. I also know that I'm talking in the present indicative. Because if it were not the present indicative, the ending would be different. So I really don't need to put I there, because this O in one sense is the I. In Spanish, the key to understanding Spanish is understanding that most of the information of a word is in its ending. So, I already have the information that I need. Hablo. Now, in English, we would have the word I speak. There's no information on the word speak. There's no information on the word eat. If I just say eat, if I'm not speaking in the imperative, that is in the command form, I don't know. I don't even know if I were to say talk, whether you're talking about a noun or verb. So I really don't need yo hablo or yo hablo, como los argentinos dicen yo. Me gusta como hablo, no? Okay. But if I were to put yo or yo hablo, the reason I put the yo or the subject pronoun I, yo, is to put emphasis on the fact that I speak. So when I include the subject pronoun, it's to put emphasis. So if you go around speaking Spanish, if you speak Spanish and you're always including the subject pronoun, it's like you're always emphasizing who does or doesn't do the action. You know what it'd be like? It would be like, you know what it would be like? It would be like we always saying do. When you want to emphasize the fact of the action in English, you use the auxiliary verb do. So there's a difference in saying I speak English versus I do speak English. Now, there are appropriate times to say I do speak English, but most of the times we don't go around saying, I do speak English, I do eat, I do study, I do walk to school. Normally, what do? We just use the verb without the auxiliary verb do, or for he, she, and it does. Because it's not necessary. You only would say, I do speak English, or he does go to school, or she, or they do cook the food. You only say that is that somewhere in the conversation there has been doubt. There has been a question, or there have been questions concerning, is this action actually being done by the person who says it's being done, or is the action being done? So to emphasize the fact that the action is being done, you say, I do speak English. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know about what your problem is, but I do. But if I were just to explain who I am and what I am and where I come from, I wouldn't say I do speak English. I would just say I speak English. If I were just to say that I go to school or I study in the university or I walk to university, I wouldn't say I do go to the university, I do walk to the university. You would just say, I walk to the university. Unless there's a reason that you must emphasize that fact. Well, it's the same thing in Spanish when you include the subject pronoun, when you're just making a simple statement. It's not necessary. In fact, it's considered incorrect to include the subject pronoun. So you would just say, hablo con mi mamá, hablo con Maria, right? Hablas con ella, versus yo hablo, or ella habla, or nosotros hablamos. Because why? Because all the information that you need in the sentence is already there at the end of the verb. You know a lot by just writing the verb. Hablo means I speak. Hablas means you speak. Habla. Now, when you're dealing with él, ella, y usted, sometimes you might want to include the subject pronoun because you don't know whether you're talking about is habla él, is habla ella, or is habla usted. And a lot of times when you're using usted or ustedes, because it's a polite, formal form, sometimes you might want to include the usted. But that's to show politeness. That's to show formality. And there's a reason for it. Okay? So the same thing when you're talking about ellos, y ellas, y ustedes, you might want to include the subject pronoun if there could be any chance that there could be a misunderstanding. Otherwise, it's not included. With nosotros or nosotras, it's not necessary. Why? Because hablamos, the amos, or comemos, the amos, or vivimos, the imos. That gives you the information you need. Now, if you need to stress or emphasize the subject pronoun, then yes, you put it. Just like if I need to stress or emphasize the action, that either I do the action or the action is being done or is done, right? Then yes, I would have to include I do speak English, I do sleep in a bed, versus on the floor, I do wear a coat in winter. For whatever reason, I want to emphasize that. But otherwise, I would just say, I sleep on a bed. I wear a coat in winter. So, remember, the subject pronoun, which in Spanish is yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, ellos, ellas, ustedes. Like I said, I don't use vosotros. Right? It's basically there when you need to emphasize the fact who is doing it. You need to emphasize who is doing the action. But normally speaking, in an indicative statement in which you're just making a plain statement, whether you're talking about the past, the present, whether you're talking about the presente indicativo, el pretérito, el futuro, I don't know, futuro, perfecto, whatever, you do not include the subject pronoun. So once again, this is Coralla Ficklin McLean from istudyguides.com. You see me in a lot of videos, and the reason you see me, because we have a very large network, and on different networks I make different types of videos. And on this network I basically do Spanish, my favorite language. Okay, besides English. Well, both of them, I love both of them. So this is Coralla Ficklin at istudyguides.com. Okay, the next time we're talking, we're going to continue with two things. We're going to do two things. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about pronouns, but I also, on another video, would like to talk to you about the crazy nouns in Spanish. Some of the nouns. Did you know that you can't say la bebé? It's only el bebé. Do you know you can't say el estrella? It's only la estrella. So once again, thank you. You have a good day. Bye-bye.